Welcome back to the Barrels and Buckets channel here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Travis Turner. The distinguished fellow on my right is my longtime best friend, Ed Chapman. This is the Coach 'em Up edition of our show. And what we're going to be doing a lot with Ed is talking about coaching and the development of youth and high school players in particular. Ed and I have been best friends now for 48 years, Edward.
Yeah, right.
I think friends had just started when we were put together back in kindergarten, but 48 years together. It's been a long and interesting journey through the world of sports together. Ed now 30 years deep in his coaching career. He continues now as an assistant basketball coach for Callaway County boys basketball, but he has worn a great many hats over his coaching career, sometimes as a coach at all of the different levels from youth baseball and basketball on up, and kind of got his start in coaching as a manager for the Murray State Racers back in the early 1990s. He cut his teeth on the sidelines under a great coach, our late friend, Ron Green. Ron was the 1978 SEC Coach of the Year at Mississippi State twice. He was the OVC Coach of the Year at Murray State, and friends for both of us, mentors for both of us. He was a great coach and a very entertaining gentleman, and it is his impact on Ed's coaching career that led us to our title here, Coach 'em Up. And Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you to this will kind of show people, young coaches, but also parents, maybe players that tune in, kind of our learning process, which continues to this day in coaching, but where our title Coach 'em Up comes from, but also the spirit of the show. We're trying to coach ourselves up continually so that we can do a better job leading the players that we coach. We hope that'll be the impact on other young coaches that might tune in. But Coach Green teaching you to coach them up. Tell us a story.
Yeah, I'd spent 3 seasons with him as just a volunteer assistant type, trying to learn at his knee with both he and Mike Dill as Ron had taken over at Callaway County High. And so then I was given my first coaching assignment that was my own gig, my own set of guys. I had the 8th grade team at Callaway Middle about 30 years ago. And of course, I was going to change the world, and I was going to be the greatest coach ever, and whatever. I quickly found out that helping him versus being in charge of your own team was markedly different. And in particular, this group wasn't a terribly talented bunch, and they lacked certain skills and certain things they couldn't do. And I was lamenting to him, "Hey, coach, I mean, these guys can't do this. They can't do that. I don't have anybody who can do this. We just get overwhelmed by people who put pressure on us and all this stuff." And I'm just telling him all the list of things that these guys cannot do. They cannot do. They're never going to be able to do it. And more than anything, I'm offended because it makes me look like I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm certain that I know how to coach. But when you get beat 25, it looks like you can't coach. And in his deadpan style, which everybody who knew him knew that this is how he interacted all the time, he just simply listened to my ranting for 2 or 3 minutes, took a quick glance in my direction and said, "Well, Eddie, you ever thought about just coaching them up?"
And there you go.
And he really didn't add too much more to that. The richness of that has only been able to sink in with me over the years, as I have then been able to tell that story over and over again to other people and say, look, it was just simply a matter of, can you make some of these guys somewhat better? Are any of them coachable? Are any of them moldable and shapeable in a manner that they can learn something? Have you ever thought about just focusing on what they can do and what you can help them do better, rather than constantly focus on what they cannot do? And that was a great lesson to a 23-year-old coach who thought he knew something that was quickly finding out that he didn't know anything. So Coach 'em Up has stood with me, and I've shared that short story with you 1,000 times, and it's always been our answer. We have learned the hard way that really all you can do is coach them up, make them as much better as you can with what knowledge and what skill that you have as a coach.
Well, and Ed, it is such a wonderful lesson, and it's so interesting to hear you talk about how it has resonated, and but more than that, it has evolved into true understanding of what he meant, and experience really the only teacher. You just have to live it, you have to walk it day in and day out. And you and I have come to understand better what leadership and coaching and teaching is about now. It's taken us a lot of gray hair and a long time to understand this is a ministry, this is a platform to change lives, to transform people for the better, and pass along so many of the different lessons that might have been imparted to us from different mentors over the years. May have been moms and grandmothers, granddads, dads, teachers, coaches, or so many people who can influence you. Coach Green certainly did that for both of us. And our episode 1 here, Ed and I are huge music fans, but in particular, we are music fans of a particular era. We like 20th century music, and some of it going back quite a bit. So as much as we can, every episode, the title is going to be tied some way to some classic music that we love. And so episode 1, are the good times really over for good? That's the Hag, yeah. That's our man, Merle Haggard, who was wondering such a thing over 40 years ago here in the country. We were in a tough spot, and I'm sure Merle wasn't the only person singing about it, writing about it, lamenting it if they were coaching or teaching or raising their kids. Every generation says, these kids today, they don't get it. What's wrong with them? Where everything here is going to heck. We got no shot. It's all over. We're doing it now as old guys. We didn't invent it. People have been asking, are the good times really over for good? The cautionary tale for us as coaches and leaders, just like Coach Green imparted to you some 30 years ago, you don't like how kids are today. You don't like what we're dealing with. And some of it's absolutely true, but it's who they are. It's where they are. Edward, have we ever thought of coaching them up?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, all the extraneous stuff and all the generational things that now we have seen come into play as we become the graybeards, and we think about how things used to be. And when I played, it was this way, and my coach would have never, let you get away with this, and all those various things, which I'm sure every generation always says. The fact of the matter is, you're still not coaching so much the X's and O's or the intricate details of playing. You're actually coaching people. And that's really hard to remember sometimes, because you think that you'll find something strategic, you think that you'll find something technical wise that will flip the switch, and everybody will then look to you and say, you are the genius that made it all happen. But you couldn't even get them to execute that if you didn't coach the person appropriately at some point. Right. You've got to get them to buy in. So are the good times really, are they really over for good? Can we never get back to something? No, there are still coachable young people who have a desire to get better, who come with their own set of circumstances, their own set of preconceived notions, which you may have to chisel away at for a while to be able to get them where they need to go. They have their own stubbornness or their own ingrained, thought processes. They have their own bad habits in certain sports when you're talking about the specific details. But if you can capture the person, then you're just building on the process. And everybody's end result can't be the same. Not everybody's going to be a star. Not every group of players is going to be a championship winner, but you can be the best version of yourself. And while I typically don't go in for that type of psychological babble, which is what it sounds like, the best version of yourself, it's actually true. That's all you can control, is what you become. And as a coach, you are in essence playing the role of trying to draw something out of someone that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily do on their own. That's why they need a coach, and then you may have to start with helping them see that they even need a coach.
Right, right. Let me ask you something, because along with your lifelong passion for coaching, um, you were called into the ministry not long after, similar time window to your coaching career getting underway. Obviously, the work that you've done as a minister, as a pastor, obviously that changes your heart and your mind, the way that you operate. In your coaching career, how much has being a minister impacted you as coach and leader? And then also as a coach, you talked about, just not really being aware even of this idea when you're 23 years old. How far down the road were you where you really began to understand these things we're talking about?
Oh, wow. I still think sometimes I look and say the competitive nature within me as a coach, and I often say, has my has my relationship with the Lord and my understanding of people and love for them that comes from studying the Word and trying to serve the Lord, does that show up as often as it should? And I know that it hasn't always, but it is, the idea behind it would be that I would understand the value of each and every person, and then seek to find ways that they can add value to the group, even if they, regardless of what kind of role they can play in the actual performance of the team. and,
Right.
and still, hey, they are worthy of some level of coaching, some level of investment because of who they are. If you're keeping them on the team, then they are worthy of being paid attention to and coached as well. And I know I haven't always done that well, but I'm still trying to get better at that. And then, as far as my personal journey, I think I've already sort of answered that. I see that it's quite a bit of time. I know that it has evolved and I know that it has improved. But, it's something that I was really pretty deep into it. I was probably 8 or 10 years into it before things started to shift with any significant, with any significance in
Right.
uh, that I thought about coaching and how it related to the people that we are coaching.
Right. I, of course, one of the interesting things for Ed and I, because of our relationship, we have had these conversations for so long. But when I got into coaching at the high school level, my journey was post college baseball career. I began as an instructor and as a teacher, and I'm pretty proud of the work that I did then because of the attitude that I have, just the investment in making players better. But as Ed could tell you from when we were very young, I might have what you call a competitive problem, Ed. Fair to say that it's not always brought out the best in me. Yes.
Well, fair. That's fair. That's fair. Good self-awareness.
So, well, thank you. I've learned a thing or two over the years. And so my journey back to coaching at the high school level, I was in my early 40s when I had the chance to coach at our alma mater. I took over the baseball program at Callaway County High School. And my good friend here, already deep in that particular area and beginning to understand and have some wisdom. And right after I was hired, he and I met because he had been with the baseball program, and he kind of gave me a primer on the kids we had, what I could expect, and basically he was using that meeting to temper my expectations and to get me to understand that maybe what I thought was going to happen, what I could just make happen with my sheer will, might not happen right away. And the thing, and I still hear him saying this over and over again. It's so clear now. I didn't hear it clearly, understand it clearly then, but he got to the end of his talk and he said, Travis, you have to understand, you're never going to coach a kid who cares about this the way that you do. And I'm like, well, and I hear you, of course, but they're gonna.
Right.
Well, when all was said and done, Ed's wisdom and reality won. Travis, is there a number less than zero? That's what it ended up on the scoreboard. But I did learn. I did learn eventually. And so as Ed and I were together on this journey, I think for me, it's really been in the last 5 or 6 years this deep examination. So for those of you that are young coaches, those are you that are parents that are raising players now, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your early 40s, look, it's okay if you haven't figured it out yet, but it is time to start to have awareness about these ideas of that we're coaching the human, whether it be young man or young woman, we're coaching the person. We have to develop that relationship and look to always think first of transforming that person before we get caught up in success, wins, losses, results, and glories. And Ed, I'm going to tell you something. Now that I'm retired from competitive coaching, I'm back in the instructional business. This hit me the other night, working with a couple of players, and a good result happened. And there was a reaction to the pitch, and it was a good pitch. And I stopped and I said, wait a minute. I said, we want to be encouraging all the time, all the time. But we're in a learning and a growing environment. We're changing some things. And as you know, as a coach and instructor, when you start to help people do things better through different, when you start doing different, results may go backwards.
Yeah.
And I said, understand, always reacting to a positive result may also lead to always reacting to a negative result. I said, we're not going to be about results at all. I said, our encouragement is going to be about dedication to process and dedication to coachability, dedication to effort to be better. We're going to celebrate that constantly, regardless of the result. Here in the laboratory, where we're trying to grow and get better every day, results are set aside and we focus on the person willing to do what it takes to get better. And even at nearly 53 years old, speaking that aloud to somebody, it's another mile marker on the road to coaching myself up.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, both of us really enjoy the musings and the commentary of a Nick Saban. All right, and obviously,
all right, good.
Yeah, he always, and he's coaching championship caliber guys all the way through and able to recruit, and so it's always a little bit different. But the beauty of what he taught was we focus on the process and relentless effort and determined execution. And when you do those things with enough talent, then his teams should have and would and did compete for championships over and over and over again. But that's still translatable everywhere in that what can you control? You can give relentless effort. You can dedicate yourself to fundamental execution of the things that you ask to do. And that is process based. That is not result based. And one of the things I have learned in the last several years that I have brought to coaching is I try to constantly encourage the players to do something at a level that causes them to fail in practice. Something as simple as ball handling drills where we constantly I'm constantly saying how we want them to do it and screw it up, mess it up now. You can't dribble with your left hand in a game. Okay, then every rep with your left hand in practice, do it no matter how many times you kick it into the concession stand. Fail now so that you might someday on the stage not fail.
Right.
And I like to encourage failure and then build them up because it is the step to development and process that gets you to a better performance. But we all know that from a player standpoint, players tend to protect themselves. They don't want to look bad, not even in practice. And they think rightfully so that they want to impress the coach by not messing up. But as coaches, we have to encourage them to get outside of their comfort zone, outside of their norm, so that they might expand their capabilities and encourage that and give them permission to do it wrong along the way of developing the process. Yes, you're going to get coached, but no, you're not going to constantly be harped on for your inability to do it right now.
Right.
And we're going to actually praise you for the willingness to keep trying it, even though you are in front of your peers and not doing it well. And that has been a big shift for me. I've always been so performance oriented, thinking about, well, what it's got to look like someday. Yeah, but if you practice inside of this bubble or this shell all the time of the things you can already do well, and you've already determined as a coach, well, this is all these guys can do, and this guy can only do this, and we'll never ask him, we'll never try to make him do anything extra or different. He can't expand, he can't improve. And he certainly can't do it if he has no permission to do it. If he gets blasted every time that he loses his left hand dribble and he kicks it out of bounds because he tried to go left. Well, if the play called for him to go left and that's where the room was and he tried it, he just didn't do it well, then you can talk about technique, how he could do it better, but you've got to praise him for being willing to attempt it. And then at some point, if you have to reel it back in and say, look, for the sake of the team, that's not who you are yet. Now you start to work. Now you start to reverse engineer, so to speak, of what you need to be able to do to help your team.
And that's the tough marriage that both of us will acknowledge when you're trying to help and transform individuals, but you're also responsible for the group. And obviously when you also have very competitive players, they want to see their opportunity maxed out. That's why coaching is such a tremendous challenge. And Ed and I will continue to delve in to that. That'll be some special episodes. How do you marry the needs of the individual with the needs of the group and the realities of what teams can and should be able to achieve? This whole idea, again, are the good times really over for good? And again, it's just so easy to look back to how things were and say, well, it used to be like this, and gosh, now we're struggling so much because people aren't like that. I want to offer this reminder about the reality for all of us. This is a banquet speech that I've given many times. My grandfather, when he was 19 years old, he was in the European theater of World War II. And at one time in his experience, he was even on the wrong side of enemy lines. So a kid from the country, from little bitty Golden Pond, Kentucky, and Trigg County. Now he's in Europe and fighting for his life every single day. I mean, that's his true reality. How can anyone ever measure up to the toughness of a Depression era kid from the country that had nothing, who actually joined the Army to have something better and ended up in World War II? That's a level of toughness we can't even comprehend. My father didn't have things as difficult as his father, but when he's 19, he's working midnights at a plant, General Tire over in Mayfield, to put himself through school to get a college education. That's pretty tough. That's going through it. When I was 19, I was playing college baseball and life was pretty easy. So when I look at kids and say, oh, you guys aren't as tough and as competitive as I was, well, hey, look, here's a reminder, dude. You ain't who your daddy was. You're not who your granddaddy was. This has been the evolution of things. So, Ed, here's the question. Against this backdrop of dealing with modern times, but believing in discipline, believing in toughness, believing in commitment, here's the question. What part of old school should endure, and what part of a modern approach is better?
Right. Well, that's the thing, is it comes back full circle to coach them up. What is the situation as the coach? You need to be able to analyze it and say, okay, whatever methods that I like or preferred in a certain time, or the ways that I was coached, I've got to adapt. I've got a job to do. And so I still think that when you build the relationships first, and this is backwards from the way that we grew up and were coached. Right. We were told this is what you do, and nobody's trying to see how you feel about it. Nobody about it. But you know what? It does matter. We actually live in this super technological, supposedly connected world, which is actually more disconnected. And so the personal touches, the personal connections and relationships, the sense that each player needs from their coaches that say, these guys care about me, the person, we do have to address that first. And then from there, when you have earned their trust and you have earned that developed relationship, now you can instill your core concepts of toughness and discipline and togetherness, whatever your issues are related to the team. But it used to, we were like, hey, you made the team, Nobody cares how you feel. This is what the team's going to do.
Yeah, and do what we say.
And you'll just do it because you want to be part of the team.
Right.
Well, now they've got 1,000 other things that they can go do and that they will go do. And so if you want to develop, you better start with the people first, and you better start with the connections and coach them up individually and understand that. And then from there, you build this level of trust and commitment to the team and understanding, because they have been bombarded with a me first lifestyle over and over and over again, where everything is supposed to either make them happy or satisfy them, or they can just move on and get something else.
Right.
And so I think we have to approach it from the totally different direction. And as a coach, as somebody that's getting older, that still is new to us, but that's part of what's exciting.
Ed, I don't know that there is a particular answer to this question. It's one of those that maybe we just keep working, we keep trying, we keep studying. But for our younger coaches, to have them avoid the pitfalls that we fell into, the things that were handicaps and obstacles for us that took us. We've talked about the length of time it took us to learn these lessons, to learn how to approach this way. If you were going to coach up young coaches and give them just one or two simple pieces of advice to get to this point sooner, what would be most critical to you to help a guy who's 26 years old and in his first or second year of coaching? What advice might you offer?
Well, it would start with, I hope that they have somebody that they can use as a mentor that has the experience. Unfortunately, many times we take young coaches and just throw them out there essentially to figure it out for themselves. And that's pretty tough. But more than anything, I would say the best way to start is to start with looking at each individual player, thinking about how you can relate to them and what would be best for them. Because I do believe, and we'll hit on this in other episodes, but if you want to make your team better, make the individuals better. And as each individual gets better, it will make your team stronger.
Right.
As opposed to, this is the team and I'm just constantly talking in generalities. I think you've got to be willing to get specific with individual players, talk with them individually, care about them, care about their development, and work really hard as a young coach to set aside the results that those players can produce for you. Try not to let that determine your level of investment and enjoyment with them. And that's tough.
Right.
Tough. But try to find the pleasure and set the dials a little bit differently based on what can this group of players, what can they actually do? And then set smaller intermediate goals of accomplishment, things that they can control, and not be constantly consumed with the scoreboard and the one-loss record.
Ed, as you know, a major influence for me in my coaching career and just generally in life is our good friend Brad Burns, who is the outstanding head baseball coach at Pleasure Ridge Park High School in Louisville. And Brad, when he was here with us in this area, is the pastor at Elm Grove Baptist Church. And as he and I worked together in youth baseball, and then he helped us at Callaway County before returning to Louisville. Brad just always talks so much about, a purpose-driven approach to coaching, to having that mission and that mission statement for you. And I think we would both agree, for young coaches, you need to identify what is your purpose? Why are you doing this? And then when you've set that mission, when you have your idea of why and what you should be doing, then you begin to ask and answer the questions of how do we best serve that purpose and serve that mission?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, really, your goals as a coach, as a young coach, ought not to be, I want this head coaching position or whatever at a certain time, or now that I have that, I want to win X number of games every year or such and such championship. We want to be able to win that. When that is your constant focus, you're setting yourself up for bitterness and disappointment when you don't have those results. So
Right.
the thing that you need to be able to evaluate regularly, I'm talking about weekly or even daily as you coach these young men, is something like you said. What is it that I want to provide for them? I am a servant leader. The coach is not the field marshal, so to speak, although you'll have to be in charge. You are not the drill sergeant, although you will have to establish norms and what's acceptable. But more than anything, he is a servant leader, a minister who gives of himself for the betterment of each person. And then as a result, that will be the betterment of the team.
Right.
And that's the thing. Understand that most everybody that comes into this has their primary interest in themselves and not the team. And that will offend you. But what you'll need to do is work over time to shape them. And what they see in you, if they see that level of dedication in you and servant ministry to others, at some point it has to have an impact. And I don't believe the good times are really over for good, that every kid will reject that. I think you will draw them in the right direction. But the person who's most responsible is that dude in the mirror. And yeah, are you coaching them up, or are you angry about what they're not able to do for you? Big difference.
And we'll tell everybody, coaches, parents, players alike, the greatest obstacles to coaching them up and doing it the right way: pride and ego.
Yep.
And that's, and that's a battle hard won. And it is only won, I think, through a constant fight to try to kill them off every day. Because again, we are, coaches are human too. And those are the particular challenges that we fight. So we're just getting started here. This is episode 1. Ed and I, we may stay at this as long as we're able to stay upright and talk about these things. We found this journey is, again, it's kind of never ending to get where you want to be, to where you need to be. So we'll continue to approach things. One other thing we're going to do, I'll set up episode 2 for you here in just a second. But one other thing that Ed and I enjoy very much, we're very passionate about, is the pursuit of better understanding of the sports that we love. And baseball and basketball are at the top of our list. And we have started in the last couple of years. We have been able to have the privilege of assisting my wife, Rochelle Turner, who is the women's basketball coach at Murray State, and in my opinion, one of the finest coaches in the country. But as Rochelle has built her program in the Missouri Valley, Ed and I have been able to assist her just a little bit in terms of pointing her towards a direction and a style of play, and really getting into the value of different things in basketball. Of course, analytics has become a term in sports that is almost a dirty word for some old school folks. They think that nerds and numbers and computers are unfairly and unduly influencing how the game is played. They may have a point to a degree. I think largely there is a misunderstanding of what analytics is. For Ed and I, it's about understanding and valuing what is working best and most. And we're going to have a special episode here on Barrels and Buckets where we talk about a little bit of that, how that has assisted Rochelle with her program, but just how we see it. Ed, again, 30 years deep as a basketball guy. And remember, we're from the 20th century, so we are old school. We've learned to value that. So that'll be something else that we're going to do. But we're going to kind of consistently go down this road of coaching and relying on our mistakes, trying to help others avoid those. We're going to talk a lot about player development, and Ed and I'll be doing that as from the standpoint of being parents as well. We've raised up young ball players through the years. But episode 2, Ed, and we'll sharpen up before we go to work on episode 2. But we're going to go Rolling Stones, Ed. We're going to go Mick Jagger. You don't always get what you want.
Well, yeah, you would.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, you would only have to coach for about 10 minutes to realize that.
So we'll figure out how to do that. We'll figure out how that players are definitely going to feel that they're not always getting what they want. But if you're lucky, you get what you need and what you sometimes deserve. We'll talk about how that goes, but what you need, that is the important thing. And we'll be addressing that in episode 2. But my friend, thanks for joining me in this continued journey together. Last thing I want to say, and let you kind of wrap it up here. You mentioned mentors. I also want to tell parents and coaches both, get people that can tell you the truth, find friends that help you be accountable, help you be better. That's something that you've done for me for years. I think it's incredibly valuable to have that person or people in your life that can listen to you. Just as Coach Green did years ago, they can let you get it off your chest, and then maybe they give you what you need instead of what you want.
That's it. That's it. I mean, nobody should think that they can manage these things on their own. That's one of the mistakes that we all make in various aspects of our life, is the assumption that we can live in a silo and do it ourselves and figure it out ourselves. And again, it goes back to our pride and ego won't let us glean from other people or learn from other people. Because I got to tell you, 30 years ago when Coach Green said that to me, I was offended. Now, I didn't say it to him because of the great respect that I had for him, but I'm pretty sure I walked away mumbling and grumbling there for a second, because I took it as, oh, you mean I'm not doing my job? And that's exactly what he meant.
Yeah.
And right. He was right.
Well, and that's what, again, that's what good friends, that's what great mentors are good for. My friend, thanks for being with us today. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Folks watching, thank you for being with us here on the Barrels and Buckets channel on the Coach 'em Up podcast. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next time here on Barrels and Buckets.